The Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to speak as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. President. Mr. President, I come to the floor today because our nation is at a crossroads that strikes at the heart of our democracy. The increasingly outrageous actions of this president and his administration have brought us to this moment, where we as a nation must make a decision about who we are, what we stand for, and what kind of behavior we will allow at the highest levels of our government. And as we continue down this road paved by the president's reckless actions and his complete disregard for our nation's laws and democratic norms, I want to take a moment to step back and talk about how we got here and how much is truly at stake for our country and our democracy if we don't get this right. Let's start by considering what we know for sure. The president has repeatedly sought foreign interference in our elections, which we should all find appalling. We know President Trump and his associates pressed the Ukrainian government to meddle in our democratic process, pushing them to launch an investigation without basis into the president's political opponents in an effort to help his election. We know that he has made overtures to China out in the open to do the same. And this is important. We don't have to take anyone else's word for it. We saw President Trump's call record with the Ukrainian president, and we've all heard the president and his associates admit to their surreptitious actions from their own lips on camera. These facts are indisputable and can't be spun. President Trump and his circle of friends have been clear about their actions and their intentions, and it is clear they are unacceptable. But even more seriously, there are still many questions about the extent of President Trump and his associates' actions and their potential impacts on our democracy. Questions for which the American people undoubtedly deserve answers. That's why the House was right to begin impeachment proceedings, to determine if President Trump has committed high crimes and misdemeanors, and why months ago I too called on the House to open an inquiry to investigate the president's deeply distressing actions. Because for me, and for so many other people across the country, this is not about partisan politics or any politics. This is about maintaining our nation's security and defending the rule of law. It is about nothing less than the future of our democracy. Let me be clear. Because of President Trump, all of this is on the line, and that's how serious this is. And I have news for my Republican colleagues. As much as you'd like to stay silent on this, it is not an option. Our forefathers warned. They warned us against the power of foreign interference to undermine the foundations of our democracy. And their cautions echo as clearly and as strongly today as they did more than 200 years ago. As members of Congress, as representatives of the American people, we took an oath to defend our nation's security and our democracy. That's why the Constitution gives authority to Congress and the immense responsibility to provide oversight of president's actions. Based just on what we know, it would be a dereliction of duty for Congress not to investigate the grave threats to our country's safety and to our democratic institutions. And if President Trump and his administration have nothing to hide, they should stop obstructing. Let Congress do its job and find the facts. Furthermore, if Congress fails to investigate these issues, it would set on its own a dangerous new precedent, essentially greenlighting this president's unethical behavior and his attacks against our democratic institutions for future generations of our nation's leaders. Mr. President, that's a frightening notion. So now we are at a crossroads, and we have to make a decision. And over the coming weeks, the actions of the House and possibly each individual in this body will in large part determine which path we take. Will we allow foreign actors to interfere in our elections and undermine our security or not? Will we stand by and allow this president and perhaps future presidents to ignore our Constitution and mangle our democratic norms or not? Will we be a nation of laws or not? I believe this country is a country of laws, that our elections must be completely free from foreign interference, and that every elected official should ensure these fundamental principles come before party or partisanship as this process moves forward. Mr. President, there are other priorities Congress needs to focus on, important work we have to continue doing to secure our elections, which is all the more paramount given this president's actions, as well as efforts, of course, to lower healthcare costs and address the climate crisis and end the epidemic of gun violence and more. But we cannot ignore what President Trump and his associates have done and said, and the impact their actions can have on our elections, our democracy, and the future of this country. Mr. President, I sat in this chamber as a juror in an impeachment trial before. It was a deeply serious undertaking, and one each member took seriously before rendering a decision. That is the same seriousness that is required in this moment at this crossroads. If and when the House elects to accuse the president of an impeachable offense or offenses, the Senate, right here, will host the trial. And as senators, we will all serve as jurors. If and when that time comes, I know I will approach it seriously. And I deeply hope each of my colleagues will as well. Each of us will have to put aside every other consideration beyond the facts and focus solely on preserving the integrity of our democracy and upholding our solemn obligation to defend the Constitution. And history will record where we all stand. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.